you do, then you lose up your brackets. You end up going into second seed, and you're going to be facing Republic of Korea very likely in the semifinals.
Who still have not dropped a game. Of course, turning our attention back towards this matchup, it's Chinese Taipei's roster on your screen. You can see PK in the top, Bebe in the jungle, Morning returning back into the mid lane. He played that with Wacky Karthus in game number 1. We'll get a chance to see if he goes for something a bit more unique again in this game too. And along with Betty and Sword Art rounding it out in the bottom lane.
And the true strength was in the fact that Bebe and Morning's communication was definitely locked in. That Bebe was able to help out Morning in the early laning phase. The counter gank there means that they were communicating that one pretty frequently. And then of course when they were going in for blue buff steals, that for them, adjacent lanes were coming in hot for Bebe so they can actually challenge the Deep Vision's jungle. So I felt like really early in the game, Chinese Taipei had it locked down.
They had it absolutely figured out. A lot of that is through the strength of those raw laning phases compared to their opponents in Group B. You can see massive kill participation all across the board for both Betty and Sword Art. He's been sticking to the Varus to provide engage for his team along with that late game insurance and scaling. But now we're going to turn our attention towards Morning, and I want to talk about him a little bit more because he is a bit of a quirky mid laner. He's played many different roles for the Flash Wolves. He's not really listed with an official position on their roster because he can flex into so many different places. And here you can see that Olaf on there. Of course, it was the Karthus that we saw earlier from him.
Yeah, that's what got me last game when I saw that Olaf sitting there. So that being said, Morning as a player, you bring him in, has a weirder champion pool in comparison to Maple. Now, Maple is a great assassin player. I think the Viz play coming out of him made a lot more sense. But you bring in Morning, you try and hide Maple a little bit so he can play some solo queue, or you can just kind of watch and just kind of be able to see what's happening in game as a secondary coach while Maple joins the team. And the communication, you can already see him laughing and smiling getting into the game itself, that Bebe and Morning are actually shoring up the mid lane. Where I initially expected it was going to be Bebe and PK playing very closely alongside each other, and it was going to be the bottom lane isolated because, you know, G-Rex and Flash Wolves, that's where they're coming from initially. But it seems like Morning and Bebe able to just break that barrier.
Yeah, and of course PK has also been putting on a stellar performance, who seems to be able to hold his own in the top lane. Regardless of what's happening in the middle jungle, he's been able to hold his ground. Of course, their opponents, the host country, Indonesia, trying to take a win here, still without one on the standings, are doing everything that they can to try and catch up. They have not been eliminated just yet, but they are getting very close. I believe with this loss here, this might actually cut them out. But let's take a look at the roster. Again, it's Fake Friend in the top lane, Fong in the jungle, Wynuts in the mid lane, Irelure in the AD carry position, and Potato on support.
Now, of course, if you know this team from Indonesia, they're known as headhunters. They're bringing that roster in towards, you know, representing the region of Indonesia. This team, it should round out their, let's say, synergy, that they can play well as a team. Top lane fights actually work out for Fong and Fake Friend, just simply because they've been playing with each other for about a year now. So that's where it should be working, and technically it has. It's just been across the map synergy, because when the top lane play is happening, it's actually Potato and Irelure that are losing out in trades because enemy junglers showing up and they don't oftentimes think about the counterplay that's happening for the enemy team.
And you just saw the support picks for Potato, those Morganas, those Tom Kenches. He has to play safe because he knows the competition that he's up against is very, very fierce. Even Irelure taking that Ezreal and the Sivir, something with wave clear and plenty of safety on both of those champions. We'll see what he decides to look for once again, if that's a strategy they decide to play towards.
With how many engaged AD carries that have actually been coming out of the bottom lane, the Sivir pick makes a lot of sense. With Indonesia versus Chinese Taipei last time they faced was actually a Sivir Morgana lane that they picked up because they're putting a lot of pressure in the top side of the map, Camille, Yasuo, and Ryze, and they were trying to stop the engages from actually coming down in the bottom lane where there was an Ashe and Tom Kench. So that was their strategy last time around. It did not pan out, but I think they should try and do something fairly similar this time. Try and make it so your bottom lane can actually feel safe under these constant pressure. Braum is my go-to in this situation, or if you can get the Tom Kench, try and get it in your 1-2, depending on if they're red or blue side. That's what I'm trying to see here in Indonesia.
And you could just see the kill participation for Fong and Wynuts in that mid lane. very, very high, 78% for the duo. That's the duo that will break the game open for Indonesia. The kill participation for Irelure, Potato, and Fake Friend, all a little bit lower, around that 50%, but we really need to be watching that mid-jungle matchup and see how that shakes out, because we already talked about the strengths of the Chinese Taipei mid-jungle, the unexpected strengths of Morning and Bebe, but Wynuts and Thong, they've got themselves an uphill battle if they want to try to take the win here.
The one main stage game we saw from Indonesia actually had Wynuts be across the map on the Ari pick. That when plays were happening topside and they were losing out in that venture, that you could actually just take his talents to the bottom side of the map where you try and get things rolling. So you're right, Wynuts could actually break that entirely. They're on red side this time round, so he can probably get himself a counter pick.
Yeah, we'll see what that counter pick is going to be as we get into picks and bans for this second match, the rematch between Chinese Taipei and Indonesia. With the victory here, Chinese Taipei would lock themselves into first place in Group B, whereas Indonesia, it seems as though they have already been eliminated in the standings. This is a play for pride. This is a play for the home team. Already that Cassiopeia band away from Wynuts. Again, Chinese Taipei, they've done their homework. They know what to focus out, that mid and that jungle, and that's exactly what they're looking with this first ban.
For red side to be going for a Kennen ban, though, that's what's going to be interesting. It usually means that one of the major power picks are going to be up and available on first pick. Varus comes to mind. Aatrox being banned out because Chinese Taipei are actually trying to look across side of Indonesia and see if they're going to just ban any of the major picks. So they're at least going to get the Aatrox out of the way so Fake Friend doesn't have that in New Venture. I'm looking towards an Akali. Is anyone going to ban that?
We've still got 3 bans left, Raz. We're only halfway through this first ban phase.
Please.
And then there's still another 2 bans after that. So there is still plenty of opportunity. There goes the Poppy ban. Ooh, that's a bit of a respect towards Bebe. He played that Poppy in the jungle last time these teams played against each other. You can see him smiling on your screen right now.
If I'm Morning, I would want the Rise to be banned out here. You ban the Rise and force Indonesia to ban out the Akali. If that doesn't happen, you first pick it. That's just simply what you should go towards here.
Playing that meta strategy instead, it is the Taliyah, which has seen some flexibility over the duration of this tournament. She's got plenty of mobility. She's got great gank threat. She scales well into team fights. A very versatile and a very strong champion. But as you said, that does leave the Akali still open. Let's see if Indonesia, with 10 seconds on the clock, ban it. No, they ban away the Nocturne instead.
They shouldn't ban the Akali at this point. They're saying that, you know, Chinese Taipei, if you pick up the Akali, we'll go towards the Rise. If Chinese Taipei actually picks up the Rise earlier on, then for them, they're feeling comfortable saying that we'll either have the lane phase down pat with the Rise or LeBlanc, or you pick up the Akali and say that our team fights are looking so much better. It's going to be the Akali lock.
Yeah, there's the Akali right away from Chinese Taipei. And as you expected, that Rise would be the expected follow-up for Indonesia. We'll see if that's what Wynuts decides to go for, though last time it was played by Fake Friend in the top lane. And there, again, is that safe AD carry in Ezreal for Irelure.
They don't have to lock in a mid laner immediately. It would have to be the third pick. They just want to get their bottom lane out of the way, Ezreal and Tahm Kench, just so they feel safe in the bot side while having their range to beat. So let's just say if Irelure is landing out the Ezreal queues, then perfect. You know, works well. You can actually start playing around bottom lane. There is a situation where you can play around the Ezreal in that case. But the intention here is so that they feel safe, lock down the Tahm Kench, and then you can pick up your Rise here. So I think this is a good time to do that.
Yeah, it's the bottom lane of Indonesia clearly saying, hey, we know we're up against some very tough competition. We're going to play safe. We're going to play defensive. They've got that Ezreal. They've also locked themselves into LeBlanc for the mid lane. Now, we've already seen the Rise flex towards top if it gets through the ban phase once again, but we're going to be looking for Bebe's champion to round this out in the jungle. Already his Poppy and his Nocturne has been banned, and we're looking to see whether that Akali flexes towards Morning or PK for Chinese Taipei. Whereas Indonesia, they get the flexibility to respond and see what's left open with this next round of bans.
So it's an interesting position that Bebe finds himself in because he can go towards the Sejuani. Sure, Cleanse is being picked up by the LeBlanc, but you're in a position right now where you have so much upfront damage from the Kai'Sa and Akali, and then you have the Alistar to boot, so you do have a frontliner that you can actually expand into another engage factor. That let's say Alistar gets a headbutt pulverize and the Cleanse flash comes through from LeBlanc, you can just throw in the Sejuani ulti to follow up. So you just layer it down. The Chinese Taipei would have a good composition. They can just technically go for an Orin top lane and then try and get a Kindred jungle. So there's a lot of ways you can do it. They have a lot of flexibility.
Well, the Camille is now taken away by Indonesia, so they're still holding on to Fake Friend and Fong's champion. Of course, that Camille can flex between both the top and the jungle, so we'll see where that ends up going. But now this is the chance for Chinese Taipei to round it out. You already said they've got massive teamfight damage. They've got pretty comfortable engage with the Alistar and the Akali. Now we're looking for one big teamfight pick to set it up and really clarify the direction of Chinese Taipei's comp, or try to lock down whatever flexibility it's going to be. Vladimir is the first showing out of Chinese Taipei. Still can be flexed between PK and Morning. Let's see if they decide to go for that big engaged tank in the jungle for Bebe. And it is engaged, but it's not a big tank. It's Xin Zhao.
It's a bruiser. So it just means that they didn't want to lose out in the early game. They wanted to be able to at least challenge the Camille pick. So there we have it. Xin Zhao and Akali are going to be your major brutes in the mid side. And I want to see how Chinese Taipei can utilize that in challenging Camille early on. Now, Xin Zhao can actually clear fairly easily. Camille can't. Camille actually has to go for single camp, so Krug seems like a stretch. Raptors are going to just tear her apart. So for her, a lot of times their typical pathing is take big buff into either another single buff, or you can just go in towards the Scuttle Crab and then gank. So you can get a level 2 gank across. And you have a LeBlanc here too, so it's going to be a Kali that's going to be threatened out fairly early on, or the Vladimir, depends where they end up putting their laners.
There's still some pretty big flexibility from Chinese Taipei between that Vladimir and Akali, whether they want to try to send it top, knowing that Fake Friend will be taking the Ornn up top, which is a pretty easy gankable lane, especially when you compare that to a LeBlanc in the mid lane who can distort out of that. The Ezreal in the bottom lane who can arcane shift away. But as the coaches shake hands for the last time this tournament, we prepare to load onto the Rift for this Game 2 between Indonesia and Chinese Taipei. Again, a victory here seals Chinese Taipei in the standings, locks them into first place. Whereas Indonesia at 0-4, they have already been eliminated from semifinal contention. This is for the pride of the home country. This is for the team themselves. As we get in, let's get a chance to see who is going to take the victory for this round 2 between Chinese Taipei and Indonesia.
It's going to be fun to see how Indonesia end up attacking this one hard and early is their name of the game right now. For LeBlanc and Camille really early on to see if they can bully out Morning. If they can do it early, excellent. If they can't get the job done, Xin Zhao is going to be down there next, so starts all here.
We've loaded onto the Rift. We'll absolutely be keeping an eye on that early jungle setup from both Fong and Bebe. As we get in, it's Chinese Taipei versus Indonesia.
Going in the champ select, every time you look towards the top side, if they had Vladimir top lane or Akali top, for me, didn't mean too much. Does not mean it feels like for Xin Zhao, he's going to be doing a lot of the work if he goes for a gank in the top lane, just because Akali doesn't have the consistent damage. Sure, her Qs come out frequently, but she actually is pretty much limited by her, I think it's 200 worth of her, what's it called again? The
5-point strike.
Energy, there we go. She has, it uses up a lot of her energy, 2 of her Qs at the end of the day. So she can't actually follow up in a gank very easily. Going in for Grasp of the Undying to start us off, so.
Yeah, just looking for some sustain in that lane. It is a bit unique. Usually you see something more aggressive to try to chase and follow up on the kills at level 6, but it looks like PK might be focused on taking a more utility role, even if that utility is later on going to be diving into the back line and killing enemy champions. But already we've seen some early harass and trading between both Morning and Wynuts, who did complete a recall and is starting off with that corrupting potion. Looks like we're going to see that continue to happen. We do have a leashless start from Bebe and the jungle, whereas Fong will get a leash from Fake Friends.
Just means that we have to take a look at how the bottom lane works out anyways. But that being said, Fong ready for an early game top lane.
Yeah, looking for the level 2. He's got himself that hook shot. And of course the precision protocol dashes into the wall. PK with a flash over the hitbox escapes with his life, but that's flashed down during the laning phase into a lane that wants to push.
Now remember, Fong didn't have to use his flash zone, so it didn't follow up on it to get the knockout. So it just means that he can come back top for an Akali pressure. It's interesting to see that Bebe is going for this one too.
Yeah, he's on the prowl. That's actually the stun landing. Fong getting a very good trade with both hits of the precision protocol. The flash engage, Bebe uses his own. with red buff burning down, they're able to escape. It is 2 flashes for 1, but 2 for 2 if you include Bebe's up top.
And they just saw blood in their eyes there. They really wanted the kill on towards Bebe. They didn't have the follow-up. Level 2 on towards LeBlanc didn't have the chain to follow up. So at the end of the day, I mean, what Fong ended up doing is keep the top side secure, so you're going to be seeing both junglers trade sides. Fong got the flash on towards the Kali, so PK should be losing out in experience in CS, knowing that the Camille can come back top.
That very well should be how the matchup goes, as Fong is currently hovering on that top side. Bebe, though, is trying to equalize in the jungle. He's trying to go for this blue trade to match Fong's invade in his own side of the jungle. He does have his smite to try and match it, but an engaged bottom means that there's some follow-up. It keeps that jungle pressure from Bebe safe, as they are getting some good damage, and Betty will even take a turret shot to make sure that Sword Art is safe.
Sword Art's gonna get a lot of HP back here just through the passive. But remember, they're ready for the dive here. Morning is in.
That's the engage, a knock-up delayed, and they're able to get first blood even without the assistance of Morning as he's tanking the turret. Forced to drop into the Tides of Blood for slowing damage onto Potato, but Bebe chases it down, and Sword Art survives the turret shot. With a dive bottom, it's 2 for 0, Chinese Taipei.
Unreal. Just based off the 2v2 alone, Ezreal didn't have much HP to him. So that was just a quick and easy 2v2 dive. And of course, the rest of the team was there, ready to dive on towards Potato. So no way they come out of that one alive, and they lose the full experience off the wave.
It's already a 10 CS advantage for Betty. It's level 3 to the level 2 of that Ezreal. As Ireler, he just ends up eating the crowd control and knocked up, and the 4-man dive, clean as it can be.
It was easy. You can see Morning recognizing that he could take that 1 extra tower shot, and then he can just go straight in towards the pool. So really well done, the follow-up, so no one ended up dying to get the Tahm Kench.
And of course, appropriately juggling that turret aggro so that no one makes any mistakes or dies accidentally to equalize that lane. Already the bottom lane is setting up for an advantage for Chinese Taipei. Now we've got to turn our attention again back towards that mid in jungle. This is the primary carry setup from the Indonesian team. And that LeBlanc has got plenty of crowd control if Fong decides to show up for a gank.
Yeah, what she wants to do right now is get a base across so she can get some CP. Of course, Corrupting Potion just matches the sustain that Vladimir has earlier on. So the real fight ends up happening when she comes back off the first base.
Another engaged bottom. Oh no, Potato steps too far forward with the wave. Sword Art and Bebe appear for a gank and chase it down. Betty takes some damage, but it's 3 kills to 0. Chinese Taipei heavily focusing the bottom lane.
They should. Remember the first base that ended up coming out of Ezreal? He didn't have it here. Now he does, but that's because he had to have a second base after that death. So he is super far behind. There is no damage going to be coming out of Irelia for the next, 10 minutes in the game? And with how Chinese Taipei have been playing it, this bottom lane tower is definitely ripe for the taking.
Heavily being slowed down with that Ezreal. Still, though, there are opportunities for Indonesia to get back into this game and try to equalize it. We're looking at that mid. We're looking at that jungle. Wynut's trying to keep pace. He went for the Blasting Wand first to try to go for maximum damage. But look at this. Even Sword Art is roaming towards the mid lane to keep Morning safe on that Vladimir. It seems like Chinese Taipei, not only have they picked themselves a safe mid lane, but they're also playing to keep it safe.
Yeah, so the mid lane is not going to be touched anytime soon. The worry here was that Fong was actually looking top lane for a little bit, in fact still there, but PK has actually been playing super respectfully and has Bebe here.
Managed to find a level 4 versus level 4. That's the shield as Fong is just getting burned down. Call of the Forge God, but Bebe is even able to get the kill without the assistance of that. Fake Friends tries to chase a PK at level 6. Will use level 1 of that perfect execution to try and get some damage, but Fake Friends at relatively full health is able to walk safely back to his turret.
So you can see how desperate Fong was in that situation, because he was getting nailed down in the bottom lane. That wasn't going to be a play at all. Mid lane was getting harder and harder to play around, so he already got the flash to the top lane. He's like, why not make a second visit? He tried to. You can see Bebe had a great understanding of the play and came in for a counterplay. I mean, even if the Camille didn't show up here, it would just be nice to give Akali the backing because he was taking some bad rough trades. But there we got it. I mean, just an easy kill for him.
Bebe able to find that solo kill. They were setting up for a dive onto PK, but as you said, the jungle knowledge from Bebe to track where Fong is going, to track which lane is at most threat from being ganked or possibly even dove, and clearing out that blast cone enables him to find this kill. But now it's 4-0, 7 minutes in. It's already a 2,000 gold lead for Chinese Taipei. A lot of that is in the bottom lane and the jungle. as Betty and Bebe will be the recipients of a majority of this gold, but they're going to take a little bit of a while to fully turn online. So that's actually the Hemoplague being used and Ignite onto Morning. Not sure if we saw the Electrocute get procced, but Morning is going to have to be real careful walking up to these minions.
He still has Crimson Rush and Ignite, which should keep him up to at least take this next wave. The 3 minions here, if he can take it, then he'll be in a good position. And remember, Camille is not in the area as well, so there's no possibility for a dive.
Oh, why not trying to prove you wrong, Raz?
Look,
just popping under to remind him.
He cannot do it.
Yeah.
Stop trying. No mana in Toe 2. It's going to be difficult.
Not quite finding that burst still. Bebe, he's hovering around this mid lane, still keeping that Vladimir safe. Chinese Taipei, they are so quick at identifying any opportunities for Indonesia and are pouncing on it. Sword Art, he's collapsed onto Potato. I'm not sure if he spotted Fong yet, but here's the collapse from Bebe, who looped around from behind. Irelir trying to get in. Betty looking for the Killer Instinct to join the fight. Bebe forced to flash away. That's the Void Seeker. Teleport going to be used and completed as Betty dives into 4, finds himself 1, finds himself 2. Fong leaps over the wall, but Morning decides to let him go. Fake Friends looks for some action and finds himself dying as the teleport is matched from PK. It's 3 kills to Chinese Taipei.
Even with the orange teleport coming through, Betty didn't give a damn. He just went straight through 2 people, gets the kill, even with the exhaust ticking on his head. But really confident play from Chinese Taipei at the end of the day. I mean, you were wondering a lot about, of course, the jungle pressure, communication coming through mid lane. There's been none of that happening on the Indonesia side. Wynuts was trying to make the play happen mid. Camille was nowhere near there. In fact, that would have been a great 2v2 win for them had the Camille been ready for it, been primed for the play. Didn't happen. LeBlanc was low, had to end up facing. So with the succeeding team fight, that happened.
Oh, that's flash over the wall from Potato. He's actually got the Devour. No flash means he can't catch up in the ethereal chains. Misses, lands the stun. And Indonesia, they get their first kill. Finally, they are on the board.
All right, there we go. Cloud Dragon for a kill on a Xin Zhao. I'll take it.
I like that pride kill to try and set themselves up and double buff on Potato. Means that he's a little bit safer down in this bottom lane, but constant lane pressure out of Betty and Sword Art. Stormrazor's already completed from Betty, and Bebe, even though he's died, has already completed his first jungle item. This is Chinese Taipei still looking very scary, despite the fact that that kill did go over.
It's a 3K gold lead. It's
pretty big, yeah.
The game, so it's a pretty large one. You need a few more kills to actually get yourself any bit of damage. I'd say one lane that works well for you. Right now, it's still this lane. Like, the lane is still working out for why not? The problem is, he still needs a little bit of help. There's no CC coming from bottom lane to come in. I know that Sword Art was actually leaning towards the lane to provide some of his own. You just need the Camille. That's all I'm looking for. I'm not asking for too much.
Well, Fong, he's been trying to play towards his top and bottom lane, not actually playing towards Wynuts to attempt to equalize this difference as Potato, who eats a stun. That's a knockup, pinned against the wall. And though the plasma is popped, Potato is still able to heal up. I believe that was actually his flash that he just used to try and back out of this. Fong collapsing on the mid lane. That's just the strength of Vladimir, though. Ethereal Chains will land and immediately props the Sigil of Malice. He's still chasing it down. Morning will finally die, but that's another kill in the bottom lane. Irelir going low as well. A double kill to Betty as Bebe holds the wave in the mid lane.
Are you kidding me? Things were working out so well. I was starting to get my wish. Wait a minute.
They're chasing down. Good Crescent Strike resets it from Bebe, and here comes PK. Trying to close some distance. He's got his perfect execution, and from over the wall, Sword Art sets it up, and Bebe shuts it down.
Game's too hard. That's mine. That's officially, it's too hard. It was working well, because we're going to take a look at the replay of the dive that ended up happening here. Betty, I think he gets a W across. We'll have to see how it actually just walks up free. Headbutt pulverized.
Gauge. Potato doesn't even have a chance to respond as Betty chases down the kill onto Irelir. That Stormrazor's doing so much as Chinese Taipei identifying their strengths and very aggressively capitalizing on it. Even taking that first brick, that first turret down in the bottom lane. It is 5,500 gold in favor of Chinese Taipei as they are opening this game up even more. Though finally we're starting to see Indonesia respond with pressure in the mid lane. Is it enough to close the gap?
Yeah, it's probably not enough. So let's see what Sword Art in his top lane.
Chasing on the Fake Friends is PK. Forced to dash under the turret. That's Call of the Forge God. Fake Friends knocked up by Sword Art with the save. Decides not to overcommit. And PK, despite being at nearly 100 health, is allowed to walk away with his life. Now Betty is collapsing on the top lane to try and get more pressure on the jungle as Chinese Taipei. They are relentless with this advantage. They're going to try to push for another turret.
Yeah, not only is it a Storm Razors on Betty, this is the highest value double buff we've seen. Of course, being taken away from the Xin Zhao on the Tahm Kench. The kill gets on the Tahm Kench, and now, of course, Betty has it for himself, so you don't want to touch that, man.
That is some big value for the Kaisa. Already has the Acathian Rain evolve. Actually, will get it in one level. Not enough raw AD just yet, but should be getting there as Bebe is even collapsing on the Rift Herald. Knows his top lane has got push pressure, knows his mid lane has got priority over the LeBlanc. And despite the fact that Indonesia could collapse, Chinese Taipei are already set up to defend and take it without contest.
X-Flash top side, see if anyone's in the bush. No one's there. Job done. Everything's nice for him. So yeah, they don't actually need to take the top lane tower with Rift Herald. I know that after he takes Rift Herald, there's a temptation to push into the inner top lane tower, but they go straight weight up there.
That's the Ignite. Sword Art follows it up. Chemo Plague as well. The Crimson Rush as they dive 2 turrets. Ire Lure trying to hold the fort down in the mid lane, leaves top open and will end up dying. PK, meanwhile, without that turret, he's trying to chase onto Fake Friends. His Sword Art, he's just going on in good old-fashioned Odyssey. Goes from top to mid, all the way down to bottom, brings some friends with him. This is quite the journey, and he's able to find himself 2 kills for his efforts. Now the top tier 1 has been broken. Rift Herald will get a second charge onto the top tier 2. Bebe uses the Crescent Slash to try to follow his Wynuts in the back. Misses the Ethereal Chains. Betty looking to outplay this one. That's the Killer Instinct. 2 more attacks for the Plasma. 1 more, but doesn't get the kill shutdown. Hextech Ultimatum. Betty finds himself on a rampage. That's another kill as Potato tries to get forward. Chinese Taipei are not slowing down. Betty is unstoppable with a triple kill.
They thought they could get past the bodyguard Bebe. It wasn't going to happen. And this is a tough, tough game for Indonesia to swallow. They tried to get the topside fight because, of course, Alistar made the bottom lane fight happen. So you're like, at least we have the numbers, just rush them down, we can get the kill. Ain't happened.
The numbers advantage turns around. Sword Art, the roamer, traveling across the map, goes from top to mid to bottom, then back to top to enable his team to dive that tier 2. They push it all the way up. Meanwhile, the bottom tier 2 was taken by Chinese Taipei, bringing it to 3 turrets to 0. And Betty, he's not stopping. He's finished off his Rage Blade and will be trying to break down this mid tier 1. So we will have to back away, but here we get to see that dive again.
Chain misses, so he's in this back line, not going to be able to make anything happen. So obviously Betty follows up. There's no damage, no chains here. So it makes sense for them to at least try to protect Wynuts in this situation. The issue here is that they're all very squishy, and there's no real damage to follow up. So it makes a lot of sense for Betty to just walk him down. Has the Storm Razors and the red buff, makes it easy.
Betty playing around that Storm Razor's proc was able to get some massive damage in that fight. The mid-tier 1 was broken. There's another engage onto Fake Friends as they are diving non-stop. I believe the Plasma still procced onto Fake Friends, brings him down to below half. He's sitting on the call of the Forge God, but Chinese Taipei, as a 5-stack, are pushing 2 turrets in. That's the Hex Flash you mentioned. Sword Art again finds the knockup. Fake Friends forced to back out of this. He charges back to safety, but Betty is going to finish off this inhibitor turret pre-20 minutes as Fake Friends dies to PK's perfect execution, and still Chinese Taipei are just rolling forward through Indonesia's base.
Yeah, got this bottom lane inhibitor. Makes the game easier. Last time we saw them, they just stopped there and go for Baron, but look at this. 16 minutes into the game, they can end it here.
Certainly trying to, bringing the minion wave all the way up to the Nexus turrets without waiting for mid or top lane, as Indonesia just cannot fight them. The gold difference is too much. It's 13,000. Indonesia need to clear out this minion wave, but still they're going. Sword Art finds the dive. The moment the turret goes down, Irelure dies. Fake Friends respawns just to find themselves back in the graveyard. PK is snared, but the wave has been cleared out. This is the time. This is the chance. Can Indonesia hold their ground as they're forced to back away? Chinese Taipei pushing the minions in.
It's a cannon wave, so this has to be the one. If a fight's going to happen, it's going to happen here for Indonesia.
Wynut steps up. Sword Art again with the engage. Sets up his team, and again they slam it down. In a 17-minute turn onto the Nexus, PK dodging and diving as best he can to survive the full duration. Chinese Taipei close out the Nexus and guarantee themselves first place in their group.
Congratulations are in order because they passed the RAS test. I mean, it came down to how fast you're going to finish it, and if you even need a Baron to do so. Sword Art says, please, if there is a tower, if someone is underneath it, headbutt pulverize, I can get the job done.
absolutely could. It's Chinese Taipei, 5 wins and 0. This team is nigh unstoppable in their group.
Sword Art is a living legend.
Oh yeah.
Every single time we get to see him, we get the gift of him on stage. We only see that good stuff.
Oh yeah.
Nothing else. You don't get any. You don't get half Sword Art. You get the full Sword Art experience.
Full experience. Yeah. I thought my name was Dominic Romer, but his name should be Sword Art Romer because he was everywhere across the map, roaming from top to mid to bottom to mid. Even after he ensured that his own laning phase was successful against an Ezreal Tahm Kench, something that is historically difficult to break down and break apart. But Chinese Taipei showed that that is no barrier to their success.
And 2 early kills definitely did it for that Ezreal Tahm Kench. Like, they couldn't have like holding a candle to the bottom lane of Chinese Taipei. So that's what's gonna that's really what did him in. It just hurts even more that Kai'Sa was able to get herself a double buff. So tough one, all in all for Indonesia, but they had at least a fighting chance. They took a few teams down to the limit, down the line, the games that we didn't see in the primary stage. So for me, I send off Indonesia. But all in all, Chinese Taipei making a note that you cannot count them out. Because people coming into this tournament saying that China and Korea have it in tow. But if you saw the East Asian qualifiers, Chinese Taipei could have gotten, and probably for a lot of people, should have gotten the first seed of things.
I mean, along with those qualifiers, those 3 teams, Chinese Taipei, China, and Korea, all went 8-2. They all went 1-1 against each other. And it was actually Chinese Taipei that had the fastest win time of all of their cumulative victories and got seeded into the higher level of that tiebreaker. Though they did end up losing to Korea in that final tiebreaker, they still had the advantage throughout the majority of that qualifier bracket. So still, they are showing they are willing to play fast and hard and break the game open before enemies can respond. And now that they're 5-0, now they're seeded into first place, you've got to turn our attention back towards Group A and say, all right, who's going to bring them down? Because currently, both Korea and China are 1-1 with Chinese Taipei.
Yeah, and what is going to end up happening as the day goes on, China goes up against Korea. China can even it up. You might find yourself in a tie-break situation for number 1, and that's really the difference between going up against Chinese Taipei or Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. That is incredibly important. You don't have a lot of time to prep for that. So that one's going to really decide who ends up going to the finals tomorrow in the best of 5. So all eyes on what happens by the end of the day.
Yeah, and of course we'll get the chance to see that team play a little bit later because our next matchup is that China versus Korea, the rematch, where again during qualifiers it was 1-1, then Korea won the tiebreaker, and now they've won another game in this group stage. So currently it is 3-1 for Korea in favor of China. But this looks to be a very exciting match, and looking at the implications of which team will have to face Chinese Taipei to advance to the finals, to the semifinals, which will be happening later today. We've got a lot of really cool League of Legends on our hands.
There's a lot of good stuff. There's a lot of good stuff. That's why for me, I'm going to take a step back because, you know, you have all the desserts available to you. You're like, okay.
The buffet available.
Yeah, you're just going to take a step back and go for the small pickies. I want to pick out Chinese Taipei.
You got to warm up to it. Yeah.
Because we already saw a great performance from them tonight. I think the 2 games that we've seen them going up against Pakistan in a 23-minute affair. And that was literally them saying that we're not going to press you down onto your inhibitor towers until we got Baron. And then when they got their first Baron, they knocked it all down. Going to the second game, they didn't even need that going up against this team in Indonesia. They really found themselves understanding wave priority, making it so when they got the top lane pushed out, when Alistar went topside, it was really just, it made sense to him because Betty was very safe in the top side when he actually rotated.
Yeah.
So for Alistar, he just moved with Betty a little bit. I mean, he moved with the jungler a little bit more. So it just made a lot of sense when he moved with Bebe to actually nail down mid lane because they just had a single Ezreal holding the tower. That's not possible. You can't do that.
And that's where we look to the difference, not only in the level of skill of the players over the duration of that laning phase, but the level of information control that the Chinese Taipei team was able to set up, denying vision, allowing that Alistar so many times to move among the darkness of the map, and really nowhere was safe because from over any wall, that Alistar could suddenly pop up, set up some CC, and then it was an easy dive to follow up. You can see Betty doing the massive damage on that Kai'Sa from getting snowball, but it really was Sword Art enabling his team.
Yeah, so there were 3 lessons overall. The first lesson was simply, of course, Sword Art enabling, moving from lane to lane to lane. The second one was how quick Bebe was to a lot of these plays and was getting Rift Trail for them, so the setup was definitely converted into plays being made by Bebe. And the third one was actually just how confident Betty was with the resulting factor. I mean, at the end of the day, Betty was able to get a lot of team fights, so I want to see who is going to be the man of the match.
Yeah, we're going to find that out in just a second. As it ticks over, it will go to Betty at 7-0-8. Well, it was the Alistair setting up. It was that Kaisa who knocked them down.
Yeah, 7-0-8. The play that comes to my mind is the top lane fight when it was a 2v3. I think it was a 2v4, actually, in that case, where Betty was going up against the Azrael, the LeBlanc that was flying, and the Camille, and was able to knock them down with confidence. So, well played from Betty, showcases that when he gets the 80 carries that he wants to play in the laning phase that works out well for him, that he's an excellent 80 carry to go up against.
Yeah, well now it's time to have our on-stage interview with the Chinese Taipei victors. Take it away.
After match interviews, we're here with the MVP of the match, Betty. Very well done, Betty. Chinese Taipei just got their 5th victory in this group stage. And we know they're moving into semifinals. And we want to know, Betty, in semifinals, as everything is evolving, you either will face the People's Republic of China or the Republic of Korea. Which team would you prefer in semifinals?
我是最想遇到的是韩国队。
The Republic of Korea. Why?
因为其实对到那个 LPL 的时候，我们下路会打得比较辛苦一点。
Okay, we know it's going to be a difficult match, but we're going to try to do our best. Second question, tell to us, what's going to be fundamental if you guys want to go home with this gold medal? If you guys want to become champions, what do you need to have over there in the game?
就是我们在团队配合上要再更好一些。
Teamwork is going to be fundamental for this. The same as in all sports, teamwork is going to be the key if the Chinese Taipei team wants to make to that podium and go back home with that gold medal on their necks. All right, thank you very much to everyone, and we're going to go back to you, boys.